So it's for me, it's more like a wayfinder. Architecture is
Mm-hmm.
more like a wayfinder for me. Like even from here, where are we going to go? How are people going to be living? What are the,
Mm.
how is things going to change? Is it going to change for the better? How are living conditions going to be changed? All that is
Mm-hmm.
something which is very defined to how we define it as architects, and how architecture plays such a big role in shaping the future.
Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of the Arc Gyan podcast. That was a small snippet from today's episode with our guest, Rohan Rathi of Rathi Associates. Now, before we head to the episode, I just want to make a small announcement that the rest of the podcast would be on video, and you could access the video version by heading to YouTube or heading to arcgyan.com/YouTube. You can also listen to it in the audio format, but if you'd like to see me and my guests and also some slides which we would be sharing throughout the episode, you can head to arcgyan.com/YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe and like as well. Now, let's head to the episode and what you're going to learn from this episode. This is a journey about Rathi Associates and Rohan Rathi, who is a second generation architect and also a partner at Rathi Associates. Let me give you a brief about them. So, Rathi Associates was founded in the year 1976 by his father, B.H. Rathi. So, they've had over 40 plus years of experience in the industry, and they've completed various typologies of projects like commercial, interiors, residential, institutional, hospitals, you name it, they built it. So you're going to learn the entire journey and how they got started. And we're also going to learn about Rohan's journey, how he got into architecture. In fact, he's got a degree in computer science before he pursued his architecture degree in the UK. And we dwell into the various projects that they've completed, how they've transitioned during the COVID pandemic. This episode was recorded in the month of April. So they talk about how they've transitioned, and it's rather been a smooth transition for them. We also talk about the architectural education system and how we could potentially improve the quality of architectural education. We talk about Rathi Learning School, which is one of the institutes Rathi Associates has started for interior design. And we talk about technology in architecture, implementation of BIM. And towards the end, like always, we have some great advice. And we also have an awesome section called Dissect the Project, where Rohan is going to be taking us through one of his favorite projects working at Rathi Associates, which is the Experience Center at Wipro in Bangalore. So he's going to be running us through the entire project, and it's quite interesting. So that was a small brief on the episode. We'll jump right to the episode. If you want more podcast show notes, links, and more, head to arcgyan.com/45. Now, with that much said, let's head right to the episode. This is our guest, Rohan Rathi. Let's go.
Growing up, design was not something which was really alien to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was very much part of our everyday life. And, very honestly, while growing up, I think uh, our home was like a design lab.
Mm-hmm.
All the first experimentations on design that happen on our
Mm-hmm.
home. So I've always been exposed to design. I think, given the kind of exposure I had to design, I think it's just natural for someone to want to kind of, explore something different,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's where I took up my bachelor's in computer science. So I
Right.
actually did my bachelor's in computer science, but by the end of my final year,
Mm-hmm.
I had kind of decided this is something not that I can do full time as a career.
Mm-hmm.
So after I finished my computers, I started working in real estate. I worked with a developer in Bangalore. And during that phase is when, my dad being the architect, Rathi Associates were designing at that point of time for the
Mm-hmm.
particular developer I was working with. And during that phase, I had a lot of interaction with the design team, with my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is where my interest and love grew for architecture. So
Awesome.
from there, I applied for architectural school
Okay.
and went and finished my architectural schooling.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's how the journey started for me.
Yeah, it's interesting actually because a lot of us these days have so much of interest in coding and computer science that there's a big overlap between computer science and architecture these days.
True, and I think that was one of the areas of interest for me as well, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
computers being so widely taken up in our country, and especially living in Bangalore with all the software development and things like that, right? I think that was a natural transition that happened. But I guess I should have stuck to my roots. But I guess it's never too late, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I honestly believe, like, you have to keep learning. As an architect, you need to keep, exposing yourself to different things. You always have to keep adapting, learning. You need to keep growing. So I think finally I made a good call.
It's good that there is, that background of architecture and going forward, even implementing some amount of coding, you could, because architecture encompasses all these fields, right? It's a great field to, explore what you like, and in a way
No,
also,
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely, I think it's been an advantage for me. In fact, I think it's worked in the reverse direction for me because before I went into architectural school,
Hmm.
I had this background with computers, which was great, right? It helps me a lot more today when I'm working with different softwares and things
Hmm.
like that. And with all the new softwares that you have today, where you have Rhino, you have Grasshopper, which requires a lot of coding to
Yeah,
some level,
exactly. Yeah.
right? So that definitely works as an advantage. Also, I think my entire education happened pretty much in the reverse direction, right? Because I
Hmm.
actually went on site first,
Yeah.
right? I got into development, so I was on site learning, site difficulties, construction difficulties.
Hmm.
I was actually, working as in full-time site engineer, where I was doing site marking, centralized markings. I was,
Nice.
making labor payments. I was doing things like that, right?
Hmm.
So it was great experience I got in construction realities before I actually got into architecture.
Hmm.
And then once I started architecture, I think I got the other aspect of things, which was a lot
Hmm.
of work in terms of conceptual design and things like that.
And also, you build this strong sense for design, right? Design being a part of all our lives, and how you can integrate it with your projects or with everything, not only just the projects.
Yeah, so I mean, I think architecture transcends, right? You can't, I mean, I think it's really difficult to kind of define it as a constant, right?
Hmm.
Because I think, design just influences you in so many ways, right? I
Hmm.
remember my final year thesis when I was in college, right? My dissertation actually was
Hmm.
looking at these buildings and how they kind of um, in, uh, how they really influence everyday lifestyle.
Hmm.
So, I mean, look at what's happening even today, right? With all the
Yeah.
pandemic that we're going through right now. I think for me, architecture is like it's more of an exploration, it's more of experimentation, it's
Hmm.
where you need to take risks. Because, even when you approach a project, it's not something that right?
Hmm.
Yeah, you have a starting point, but that whole journey through the whole project where you come to your final you know design is an experimentation that you're doing, right? You're
Hmm.
exploring, and you should be willing to take risks. So it's for me, it's more like a wayfinder. Architecture is
Hmm.
more like a wayfinder for me. Like, even from here, where are we going to go? How are people going to be living? What are the
Hmm.
how is things going to change? Is it going to change for the better? How are living conditions going to be changed? All that is
Hmm.
something which is very defined to how we define it as architects, and how architecture plays such a big role in shaping the future.
Absolutely. And how much of an influence did your dad have on you, since he's a veteran architect and he's been part of the industry for more than 40, 50 years? So must have been a profound influence on you. Of course, you shifted to architecture from computer science, but how much did you feel that your dad influenced you as an architect now?
Oh, great amount, great amount. I mean, I have complete respect for my dad. I mean, admiration for him as an architect, for his dedication, for his commitment to the subject. I think, before I started architectural school in
Hmm.
London, I had done a couple of design courses here. I had
Hmm.
interacted intensively with my father.
Hmm.
So I pretty much knew exactly what architecture is, how the profession is. My dad's a really passionate architect, right? So it's been a great experience for me. In fact, I know while studying in London once,
Hmm.
my tutor there, he kind of commented that, I mean, because my ideas were, when I started school, were kind of already fixated, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So he had this thing with me that, my God, your ideas are so fixated. You need to kind of leave what you've learned and, go through a complete new
exactly. It's
conceptual
new
process,
relearning
right?
and
So there was definitely, I mean, I think it's been a great influence. I've had a lot of learning from him.
hmm.
He's always been very, very supportive of whatever I do. So it's been very good experience.
All right. And could you also briefly tell us about your time in architecture school in London? That was a 3-year or a 4-year course. How long was it?
So I got a lot of credit. It's a 6-year course,
Okay.
right? When I went there, I like I told you, I had done a lot of foundation courses here.
Mm-hmm.
I had done a lot of design courses. I had a whole lot of experience. So I got a 2-year credit,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it was a 4-year course that I finished over there. I did my part two, and uh, London was great experience because studying in India, I think it's a lot more tutored,
Hmm.
right? It's a lot more tutored. I think we're always waiting for approval on every step that we take, and I think that's just how Indian education system is,
Hmm.
right? But I think when I went to London, I knew the education was expensive. So I
Mm-hmm.
was spending a lot of money to get that education. And for first couple of semesters, I was wondering if they're even going to teach me anything, because it's such a different way of learning.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it really taught me how to self-learn, which at the end of it, I think was a great experience, right? I mean, I think it was just a great learning for me, because by the time I finished, it just gave me so much more insight about being experimental about your work, about taking the risks, about pushing the boundaries, and just doing things on your own, right? Going researching things, doing things on your own, not always sitting and waiting for someone's approval,
Hmm.
right? So I think that was great experience. And also I think the conceptual design work
Hmm.
that I kind of did while I was there was amazing experience, right? Because I had already had so much experience in uh, site realities
Exactly.
over here. So getting that exposure to conceptual design was amazing.
And did you feel that since you had so much of experience already, it limited your creativity to a bit because, in a way, you know so much of, I mean, architecture is also art with constraints, right?
So that's what I said, when I went there, right? Because I had already worked before going there in real
Hmm.
estate, I had interacted immensely with the team at Rathi Associates on design.
Hmm.
I was working with the developer. So I did have some preconceived
Hmm.
notions, preconceived ideas on how I wanted things, right?
Hmm.
And I think that was in the first few semesters, that was a big challenge that I faced. But I think once I understood the process of approaching projects, design with building a story around your design, approaching it in a very conceptual manner, I think that was very interesting for me to learn.
Right. Awesome. And post that, you did get to work in London for a while, right?
I did. So I started working while I was studying.
Okay.
I was doing a part time with KPF, that's Kohn
Hmm.
Peterson. So in my final year, I started working with them, and then I continued to work with them for some time. So while there, I worked on some very interesting projects with them.
Hmm.
Worked with them for a while, and then moved back to India and joined Rathi Associates.
Right.
So when I came back, I mean, we've been um, Rathi Associates. The dad's been working on multiple projects. We do both architecture and interiors in our office,
Hmm.
right? So, and we kind of concentrate on residential, commercial, hospitality, industrial. Those are the main four focus areas.
Hmm.
So came back and was just overwhelmed with the work, but it was great learning. It's been a great experience, just interacting with the team, working on all these diverse projects currently. So it's overall been a very satisfying experience for me.
And you also worked your way up in spite of being the partner or
So
founder of.
So honestly, I think, we have a very collaborative way of working, right?
Hmm.
I don't think there's anything like, owner, son,
Hmm.
or staff in our office, right?
Right.
I think it's all about your experience level. It's all about your expertise. I think we're a very passionate bunch of, professionals who work together.
Hmm.
And I think we have a very informal way of working. I mean, I've never thought of it in a way that, you know, um, I'm to say I'm Mr. Rathi's son or anything like that.
Hmm.
I think it's been a very professional way of working at our office, and we enjoy working like that, right? Where everyone is synergizing, everyone is coming up with creative ideas. There's no ego while working, so it's a fun environment.
All right. And could you briefly tell us about how Rathi Associates started and Rathi sir's, he's also worked for the biggest firms, right? Like SOM and few
So
others.
yeah, so I mean, he was with SOM in their Chicago office.
Hmm.
And while in SOM, he was working on some of the biggest projects around the world. I think the last project he worked on before he moved to India was the Sear Star,
Hmm.
right? And when he came to India, he just loved Bangalore. He loved the
Hmm.
city. Uh, we didn't have anyone in Bangalore. Bangalore is completely new to him, right?
Yeah, and back
But
then
he loved the
Bangalore is
city.
super beautiful also, right?
Yeah, I think the weather, I mean, even till date, honestly, you
Yeah.
go anywhere around the country, finally you come back to Bangalore, it's a breath of fresh air. The traffic kills you today.
Yeah.
But even then, I think even today, the weather is just amazing compared to other cities in India.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, when at that point of time, it must have been lovely, I'm sure,
Hmm.
right? Compared to today. So he loved the city, decided to settle down here. 2 years, I don't think he had a single thing to design, right?
Okay.
And nothing at all. But then I think he was really confident about, when he gets his first project, that will change things, right? And that's
Hmm.
exactly what happened when he got his first project. After that, I think he just grew the firm from strength to strength.
Hmm.
Today, we're a strong team of guys working together. We've completed over, I think, 800,000 projects across India and abroad.
Oh
We
wow.
continue to work in multiple cities in India. We're working in most of the metros. We're working in the second tier cities. We're doing some works in Europe currently.
Hmm. Nice.
So I think that's been a very interesting story for him as well.
Yeah, and the transition from US to India must have been pretty challenging, right? Because your things are not so, it's straightforward, and you have to go through various uh, hurdles, right?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I think, yes, transitioning to India itself, definitely, when you have a secure job over there, when, you're working with a big architectural firm, everything is taken care of, and then to take a decision to come back to India where you have no work, right? And
Hmm.
to settle down in a city where there's no work, that's a tough decision to take in itself, right? But he was very certain that, he wants to start off his own practice. He does not want to be. He wants to be doing. I mean, we've always kept the firm boutique, right? Because I think every project that we take, we like to spend time on it. We like interaction on it. We like debate
Hmm.
on it, right? We like to give a lot of time to the project, right? So I think that was the driving factor, and he was. I think he always wanted to start his own firm. So once he took a call to come back to India, I don't think there was any looking back. Whether it was hard, not hard, he knew he's going to be here.
All right. What would you say where would be the biggest differences, with projects in the 2000s and now? Like, how much of a progress have we made as architects in the industry?
So, Manish, I think principles remain the same, right? The principles that you design on. I mean, there have been some fantastic architects in the past. You have some of the greats whose works are even till date, studied. I mean, you look at some of the architects like Mies van der Rohe and all these guys who created fantastic. Look at Frank Lloyd Wright. They created some fantastic work uh, in the 70s, or things like that, right? So I think the principles don't change, right? You need to stay true to what you want to do. Everyone has a different way of approaching design. Everyone has a different way of looking at things, right? But yes, I think one major difference that has come is due to technology and software, right? I think the pace of things have changed. The pace at which things get done has changed, right? Today things happen at the click of a button on the mouse. It's that quick. I mean, you're working on a design for a week, and then you send it to the client, and you have comments or suggestions back within a span of within a couple of hours. So that pace has definitely changed, right? So the amount of time that you get to really sit and spend on design, I think, has reduced, right? Which I think, I mean, you can call it good, you can call it bad. We as a firm like to spend most of our time in design, right?
Okay.
We like to spend that initial time spent on a project, researching the project, to kind of spend that initial time in getting the design out, right? So that is definitely changed. I think going forward, yes. I mean, earlier I remember in office, when I would talk to people working in office, they would send a drawing. It was all manual drafting, right? It was all manual drafting. They would send a drawing. They would send it by courier. It'll reach the client. The client will take 2-3 days. Then he'll courier it back. So you get a proper 5-6 days before anything can come back.
Yeah.
Right. Today it's all over emails. Making it even faster today. You get onto these WhatsApp groups. There are multiple projects which have multiple people on WhatsApp groups. There are site photos being sent to you on WhatsApp groups. So technology has definitely changed things, right? Also, I think, with softwares like Rhino, Grasshopper, and all these things, the way buildings are being conceptualized today would have been much harder to do back in the days. You can't do those buildings without without technology
software
being a partner with you.
Yeah, absolutely. But don't
So
you
I
feel
think
that our industry, I mean, not the industry, like the industry in India in general is not progressing as much as what's happening in the West, or we're not in par in terms of, like implementation of BIM, or, like large scale projects utilizing BIM to be more efficient, so that for the long run, even the life cycle of the project is benefited?
So I wouldn't say the design industry. I think Indian design industry is one of the best anywhere in the world, right? You have some really good designs coming out of India today. I think there's some amazing work happening over here, right? Yes, I think in terms of technology, we've been slow to adapt to it, but I think it'll happen. I think it even has to do with the labor involvement that we have in our country. Labor is cheap, so there are many factors to contribute to that. But I think over a period of time, I mean, people are adapting to implementing BIM. We ourselves haven't used the full potential of BIM. We are working with Revit on a couple of projects. We are looking at getting the libraries and all that up to date within Revit. But it's yet a while where we are able to explore the full potential of it. One of the other factors for it has also been, I think, a lot of consultants haven't been
Yeah,
open
exactly. Yeah.
right now to work with it. So there were some projects in Bangalore which we were going to be using Revit and these
Right.
softwares, but then other consultants were a little hesitant to work on those.
Yeah, that's the
But I
problem,
think
right?
from a design aspect, there's some amazing design happening in India. I think the exposure level, the kind of design happening here, it's parallel to any other place.
And do you feel that because of the pandemic, things are going to change for us architects in the way we're going to work? There are few firms like the multinational firms which already work remotely. They outsource projects to India. Indians get it done and then give it back. So in a way, do you feel there's going to be a hybrid of remote working and working from the office?
So we've I mean, I know there are multiple firms doing things like that. I
Hmm.
think where the design gets done abroad, and then there's drafting work which is
Yeah.
done in India. We started using a lot of these conference calls and things like that when we started working in Europe, right?
Hmm.
So there have been multiple projects on which we've constantly been on these calls,
Hmm.
right, with consultants abroad while through the whole life cycle of the design and construction period. So I think this interaction for us started about, I would say, 2.5 3 years back,
Hmm.
right? So we kind of got really comfortable with having meetings online, doing um, these visual meetings or video conference meetings and things like that. So I think our office had already been exposed to that way of working, right? So it became really easy for us. I mean, I shouldn't say easy. I think that we had a dedicated team who was working on these projects which we are doing abroad.
Hmm.
But the rest of the office was aware of the systems that we were using,
Hmm.
right? So we're all working from home. Office has been working from day one, right? And I wouldn't say we're working at 100% efficiency, but we're
Okay.
working at a very good efficiency level. We've set up some guidelines that we're following on
Hmm.
how we need to work through this time, and it's brought in, I would say, a lot more discipline. It's really made people deliver things as per what they're committing.
Right.
Yeah, there's no calls or there's no late coming on these video calls because of excuses of traffic, which has been great.
Yeah.
So I think it's been good. I think the everyone in office has been very, very forthcoming, very adaptive, wanting to kind of be inclusive in this new way of working.
Hmm.
So overall, I think we haven't felt a lot of stress through this period, right, in terms of work, because we've been working from day one on calls.
And is there any particular system that you guys follow which might, benefit the other architects?
So, multiple platforms today. You have
Hmm.
Zoom, you have WebEx, you have Skype, you have, I think, Whereby. What we've done is we've kind of, got about 15 rooms that we've bought under Rathi Associates.
Hmm.
Uh, and we've broken up the office in teams. So each team is doing, starts their day with a meeting in the morning. So they
Okay.
start off their day with a meeting, I think, at 9:30, which are mandatory meetings. They repeat that, before lunch or after lunch, and they repeat it again before ending the day at around 6:30.
Hmm.
So these are mandatory meeting times for the teams, and it just gives everyone a break, right? Instead of just sitting, everyone's at home right now. So it just gives everyone a break, come talk to each other, whether you have work, you don't have work, you're meeting your team, right? So
Yeah.
that is something which we've done. And through the day, if there is work on a project, people are free to, independently, generically interact and get on calls. What we've also done is we've set protocols. Each of these rooms that we've set up have a WhatsApp group associated with them where the
Hmm.
team members are, part of it. We've set up some protocols on, what is the minimum reply time for an WhatsApp message, for an email, and things like that, right? So these are some basic guidelines that we've put in place, which are actually working really well, which are working pretty efficiently, actually.
Awesome. So, in a way that, architecture firms, I don't think work has been stalled, but on site, I think a lot of projects have stopped work. And you feel that that would affect the revenue for architects, or, that architects have to take a pay cut or give pay cuts to the employees?
I mean, we are not doing any pay cuts, right? We are not doing any pay cuts, and I think
Awesome.
things should be back to normal. I definitely think yes, construction will take a beating. Real
Hmm.
estate industry, all anyway, I think had number of problems that it was facing,
Hmm.
and construction definitely, I think, will take a little bit of a slowdown, but I think it should bounce back. It should bounce back. We've been fortunate enough to have design projects that we had to finish up, so we've utilized this time to finish up design projects, to get in pace with things which we wanted to keep ready when sites start again. So it's been time that we've used for things that were pending, which has been great. But yes, I think sites being stopped definitely would have affected a lot of the industry, right? A lot of our projects also, teams that were working on projects where things were already completed, but construction was going on, right? Some of those teams have just been sitting idle on those projects. So we've transitioned them on to other projects now,
Right,
right?
right.
So that they can help out finishing other projects as well. But yes, I think we all need to just wait and watch how this pans out. Hopefully, things should be back rather soon. All getting back to normal. But we'll have to wait and watch.
I just want to bring back design. Clients in India have a big influence on us architects, and there's a lot of changes back and forth. Um, and less than 10% of the construction in India is planned or designed by architects. So going forward, how much of an influence or do we need to be as architects, or change the mindset of a client, because they always think about more built up space and always expanding. It's something along those lines, right?
So I think India is a very cost-sensitive market, right?
Hmm.
India is everything is very cost-sensitive in India, and I think people are not exposed enough to kind of understand the importance of an architect, right? And that's why you see so many buildings. I mean, I think you mentioned a percentage that 80% of the construction is not uh,
Yeah.
designed by architects. I think that is because of people not understanding the importance, but I think that is changing. People are
Hmm.
definitely getting more exposed. Uh, Regulations are coming in which are making things more stringent. For example, the RERA, right? I think developers are definitely getting much more conscious in the way they
Hmm.
build, in the way they want to build, and not to have violations in buildings, right? There is a definite increase I see in wanting to do good work, better work, being more sensitive to the environment, looking at how we can be, more sustainable. So I think there is definitely been a huge increase in the number of people that I speak to who want
Hmm.
to do good work, who want to make a difference, which is a very exciting thing, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think we as architects, I mean, I think public spaces in India today are a disaster, right?
Yeah.
I think the government, there has to be a good collaboration between government and architects to see how we can improve public spaces. I mean, I think that is the basic level of exposure that you can give people to understand how design can actually evolve how you do things, right?
Hmm.
Because if you have good public spaces, I mean, look at the population in India. A lot of people don't really know what is good design and what is not good design, right?
Hmm.
And you can't blame them, because you look at our roads, you look at our public spaces, it's a disaster. I mean, you look at, for example, you look at what they did with the metro in Bangalore,
Yeah.
right? So I think there has to be a good collaboration between the government, between BBMP, between architects. We all have to definitely be more open to taking up interesting projects for the city, and
Hmm.
kind of curating something which is nice, which is definitely going to have an influence on how people also then perceive the profession.
Do you feel that I mean, I'm not vouching for this, but there is some amount of corruption also in the construction industry, right? Especially in city like Bangalore, where you keep bribing to get sanctions and all that.
So, we've never gotten involved with uh, any kind of bribery and things like that.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there must be instances where cases like that happen, but we've kind of been always, we don't take up licensing work with BBMP, right?
Hmm.
We will get the drawings done, we will get all that done, but then we give it to the client, and then clients get the sanctioning process in place,
Yeah.
right? So I have never really come across that, so I wouldn't want to even comment on it.
And coming to, academia and architecture, uh, the architects these days that come out, I mean, even in 2010 or the years before that, and you compare now, the education and the quality of education imparted here is still lacking, right, in substance, and creating really good architects in architecture schools.
So, like I said, I think this really, I mean, I definitely think, because we get a lot of interns, we get a lot of, fresh architects who, are always applying
Hmm.
to join and work with us. So I definitely think that has to be a lot more, exposure that is given to, architectural students when they're coming out. I think the
Hmm.
uh, conceptual work, the level of education definitely can do with a lot of improvement, right? But said that, I think it's also, I think architecture as a subject is a lot to do with, your own exposure, your own thinking, right?
Hmm.
How you adapt, how you kind of expose yourself as well, right? A lot of architecture, according to me, is a lot of even just common sense, right, to a certain
Hmm.
level, right? I think that that has to, I mean, the whole system of education, I think, needs a little bit of a revamp, because
Hmm.
I think we are not trained to kind of work on our own,
Hmm.
right? Even
Yeah.
even when we get trainees, when we get fresh architects, I always see this as a big problem, and that's what I told you, which was a great learning for me when I was studying in London, right? Because I kind of understood how to self-learn, how to do things on my own, which I think doesn't happen in India, right? I think in India you're waiting for approval on every step of your process, which definitely needs to change. Which
Hmm.
I think that is something which needs to change, as in every field of education, every area of education.
And you also do go to teach in architecture schools, or I think you have your
I
own
haven't.
institute, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done that. We Rathi Learning Space is a design institute that we run. It's an
Hmm.
interior design institute. So I teach over there.
Right. Right.
Um, so we started that, I think, about 10 years back. And my father, Mr. Rathi, used to teach. He used to teach at RV and BMS, but now
Hmm.
he also teaches at our institute, which is the Design Institute.
Right. All right. And how do you feel like, since you studied in London, and what do you feel that we should do to improve the system in India, the architectural education system? Apart from, is there any practical steps that we could take, or do you have any tips which you have in mind?
I mean, I didn't go to architectural school in India, so I have limited knowledge about how architectural school in India is.
Hmm.
But I think conceptual work definitely can, needs to be given a push. How you develop a concept, how do you translate, a concept from its starting point to the final design, how do you create a story out of your design? I think that is very important, right? For me at least, that is very important. And I think every project comes out to be different only if you have, and if you're able to kind of conceptualize a project like that, right? Otherwise, how do you differentiate a project from one another, right? I mean, you're only working then with the bylaws, with, the local, the site and things like
Hmm.
that. But if you really want to develop a story, you need to know how to build a good concept around it. You need to know how to translate that concept, right? So I think that is very critical. I think letting people do things on their own, not spoon feeding, letting people explore, experiment, take risks, work with materiality, things like that, through college, giving them the right exposure. I think a lot of students that come out of colleges in India, don't have exposure. They haven't seen what is, when you say you're designing a five-star hotel, there's so many students who come out who haven't even seen a five-star hotel. They don't know what it is, right?
Hmm.
So I think they haven't seen what's a restaurant. They haven't seen what's an, I don't know, different kind of projects, right? So I think that exposure level is very important. And I think that needs to be built in. The other thing which I think needs to become mandatory is when you finish architecture school, right? You don't finish architecture school till you work for a number of years with a good architect,
Yeah.
right? Today you see architects who come out of college and start their own practice.
Yeah.
I think that's a disaster, right? You
Yeah.
really need to work with a good architect. Not necessarily you have to work with a big architectural firm. You can select a small architectural firm. You can select work with a good architect. You're going to learn much more. You need to work for a good number of years. According to me, work with just two architectural firms for a period of 8 to 10 years. You
Hmm.
know, give that amount of time with, but be very, very careful about the firm that you select, right? Because you
Hmm.
want to select a good firm. You want to get that experience. You want to learn, right? I definitely think one of the things that we should change in architectural school is, you know, people should not be able to practice until they have finished their education and worked for a certain number of years with an architect. And you see a lot of people today, we get a lot of resumes where every year a person has changed jobs.
Yeah.
What are you even learning? You're not even learning anything there, right? So you need to be able to work with a firm for an extended period of time. You need to be able to settle down in the firm. You need to be able to take responsibility. You need to learn. You need to see a life cycle of a project. Very, very important.
Yeah, coming back to that question, right, where you need to be an entrepreneur these days, and
Yeah.
you can't just be an architect. You need to, because even as architects, when we see our friends doing so many things, we'll be like, okay, even I need to do something, maybe at least for the industry, as an entrepreneurial, or nowadays you call yourself as an archipreneur.
So, like I said, I think you can be an entrepreneur within architecture itself, right?
Hmm.
I mean, but if you really want to practice architecture and if you want to, really, but I think your core time needs to be definitely given to design, because I
Hmm.
think if that is not done, then I don't think you're doing justice to the profession. But yeah, said that, I think, as architects, I think we have a very dynamic space to be involved with right now, because
Hmm.
age groups, you see, the working age group has suddenly moved from being the 45-55-year-old to
Hmm.
being a 30-year-old, right?
Yeah.
In fact, being a 22 to 25-year-old also today, right? You have these entrepreneurs who are coming up, who are handling billion-dollar company valuations, and
Exactly.
they're not over 30, right? So how do you actually adapt and design for that age group, right? Which is the interesting part of architecture, because I think we're always evolving. I mean, you always have to be concerned about what is happening around you. You have to be sensitive towards what are the social, economic, cultural changes that are happening, because that's what is the strength of architecture, because you take that and then you get something new born out of that,
Hmm.
which is where, I mean, that is what I said, that it's like a wayfinder for the future,
Hmm.
which is very interesting for me, right? But I don't think you can do that, especially in design, if you're going to be doing multiple things, right? Because
Hmm.
it's going to take up time. You're looking at all these different aspects of life, the environment, cultural aspects, social aspects, and out of that you're blending your design, which has to be aesthetic, it has to be functional, so there are many aspects to it. So I think if you're doing architecture, you need to really be dedicated to the subject,
Hmm.
but get exposure from everything else.
Awesome. Do you feel that it's not enough to be a traditional architectural practice these days, and you need to venture out into even other things? Like in your case, you guys have started a school, interior design school, but apart from the school, maybe even other ventures which would benefit you as an architect, your practice, and also design.
So I think the school was not something which, I mean, I think our core yet remains design, right?
Hmm.
That's what we enjoy doing. I think the institute was more from a point of view of being very, getting out some really creative thinkers, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I think we wanted to kind of inculcate that conceptual thinking. We wanted to today when you see a lot of architects, they know nothing about services, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have people coming out of colleges, they don't understand services, they don't understand plumbing, electrical, air conditioning. No. So I think it was more of, you know it was started by my father, and I think it was more of him, finding and being passionate towards architecture itself and wanting to pass on his knowledge, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
how it actually started. But other than that, I don't think we have really looked at exploring into any other avenues. We've stayed core, to design. We've been true to design. That's what we enjoy. We've been involved with architecture, interiors. We haven't looked at getting into anything else.
All right. Could you briefly tell us about any interesting projects that you guys have done, and maybe take us on a project journey, like right from the design phase to its construction and eventually handover?
So, I think, like I told you, there are a couple of areas that we work in,
Hmm.
and residential, commercial, hospitality, industrial. I think every project that we take is very distinct, right? Because I think our design process is very different for each project.
Hmm.
So, but couple of projects that we're doing in the city, which are very, for me, very important, because I think they're very important for Bangalore as a city. We've gotten into doing these sports infrastructure projects.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a project in the heart of Bangalore in the CBD,
Oh, nice.
which is for an Bangalore Football Club, SUFC, South United FC,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're doing this facility for them. In fact, I had extensive discussions with many international football clubs before we started designing the project. I
Nice.
visited a number of countries to go and see the infrastructure setup, the medical setup, the gym facilities, the training facilities, and things like that. So what we are doing in Ulsur is we have two football fields. We have one 11-a-side, one 5-a-side.
Mm-hmm.
We have a gymnasium. We have an high performance training center. We have coach rooms. We have a 120-seater cafe coming up with it, and this is all in heart of the city. I think
Okay.
I think Indian sports internationally need to be given a big push, right?
Yeah.
And I think the Indian sporting infrastructure, from a design perspective, from a design aspects, needs needs really world class cutting edge design today. And
Yeah.
I think that is why our interest levels are really high to work in this area. So this is something which we're doing in Ulsur. It should be ready in the next 2 to 3 months once the lockdown opens. We're doing something like this in Whitefield, where
Mm-hmm.
we're doing a multi-sport infrastructure facility
Nice.
that's going to house two football fields. It's going to have multiple cricket nets, multiple basketball courts, multiple badminton courts. Again, it has a 60-seater cafe, supporting infrastructure facilities for coaches, for players. And I think these are really important projects. I mean, we continue to do multiple projects, from residential, commercial, all these areas. But for me, these projects have been really important because they're community projects for me, right? I mean, look at Whitefield today. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's a dense residential and commercial collection put together, right? There's no space for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are no public spaces, there are no parks. So for me, projects like these are very, very important, that we concentrate on, just to rejuvenate all our suburbs, our cities, things like that. Yeah. So these two are very, very interesting projects to me. We're doing multiple projects in this area now, but there is another project which which we did for Wipro, which was a
Yeah. I'll
very
just show you the
interesting concept
slides.
development. So this particularly I send you because
Mm-hmm.
it was a really beautiful concept development. If you look at it, if you go back to the plan view, Manish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 1 second. Also, I wanted to ask you, architecture in general has this bad connotation of being elitist, serving
Mhm.
only for the richer clients and not really serving the general public, because if you see what's happening during the COVID pandemic, the biggest brunt is being faced by the migrants and the general public, the informal sector in general. So how do you feel that architecture could help, uh, the lesser, the backbone of society, and who haven't had their due been given?
So, I mean, given just to answer what you said, I think there's a lot being done even for the laborers.
Hmm.
There are a lot of our construction sites where laborers have been stranded,
Hmm.
but I think we've all come out as a community. I know a lot of developers. I know a lot of architects who have definitely are doing a lot to support them while
Hmm.
the lockdown is on. We have never been of the idea that good architecture gets created only by spending money, right?
Hmm.
I think skill lies in being able to create something where you know it's you don't have to spend money. I mean, money does not drive good architecture, right? I think you're a good skilled architect if you're able to create something really beautiful, even with the minimal cost, with materials which are very inexpensive. So I think that has always been our firm belief.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Rohan, could you briefly tell us about this project which you
So
guys have done?
this was, I show you a smaller area of the overall project,
Hmm.
but this is a project for Wipro. It was an experience center that we were doing for them, right? And they wanted to showcase to their clients all the different verticals that they work with.
Hmm.
And it was a very interesting, space that they gave me. If you look at the space at the bottom corner,
Hmm.
right, that was the space where the experience center is.
Right.
And the top, which is highlighted in red, which is written as the real world,
Hmm.
right, that was where people people would enter to come into the space, right? And where you see I've written knowledge tunnel, that was
Hmm.
a long passage which we had, right? So it was kind of a challenge because initially when we looked at the space, we had to convert an existing office. Like we had to kind of take out a couple of workstations and things like that and create this experience center over there. But the challenge was, where you go from your entry point into the space, you have almost a 60 feet long passage.
Hmm.
So, like I said, I think it's really important to create a good story to your design. What we did was we looked at it as the real world, which
Hmm.
is the red color space that I show you in the plan. And then we looked at this passage
Hmm.
as the knowledge tunnel. And what we did was, when you enter from the real world into the knowledge tunnel,
Hmm.
we created that tunnel with LED screens on either side. So when you walk through that, you're getting glimpses of what Wipro is about, right? You're
Nice.
understanding Wipro of as a company, as an organization, of the different areas that they work with. And we use the last space, which is called the Wipro zone, as
Hmm.
an enlightenment tunnel, right? Where you enter with it's a whiteboard. You enter with no thoughts in your mind, right? And
Hmm.
then there were these pockets of color that were created, which had all the different verticals that Wipro will be displaying to their clients, right? So that was the concept development that we did for this project. So just to show that, it does not matter on the size of the project, right?
Hmm.
It does not matter whether it's a big project or a small project, but if you have a really good starting point, if you have a really good story to it, you'll always come out with something really nice and creative.
Amazing.
So this is what we did. This is what we did, and uh, came out. I mean, it was very, very well appreciated, and I think the whole story towards the design was very interesting as well.
Yeah, you can say, like, we need to be more sustainable. You need to implement a lot of local materials. But architecture in general, like if you see in olden times, it's had a profound influence on society.
Mhm.
And it's great that as a profession, as this grand field, that we can use architecture to influence people's lives and mold how they work and how they play, right?
No, definitely. I think it definitely has a big influence on how people do things, right? Because think of it, 85-90% of your time is spent within a built environment, right? So the way you design that built environment can have such a big impact on you. The way I mean, I think yes, going forward, I think you are going to see buildings being a lot more sustainable. In India, I think you see a lot of glass buildings in Bangalore,
Hmm.
right? Which I think is a little bit out of context when you look at it from an Indian perspective,
Hmm.
right? I think you need to start. I think we need to start doing things which, will look at local materials. I mean, if you look at the history of Indian architecture, it's great, right? You look at our history, there's some amazing architecture which has been done. So
Yeah,
I think we
absolutely.
need to draw inspiration from within instead of looking at the West.
All right. Yeah, and hopefully even the clients would understand that it's not just Vastu, or it's not just saving money or using cheap products. It's more about the sensory experience, or more about the feeling of that you get from architecture.
Which I think is definitely on an increase. I think clients are definitely more aware. People want to do better, want better spaces, want better designs. So I think that is definitely on an increase. At least all the clientele, most of the clientele that we have, definitely we see a lot more awareness in, doing a sensitive, having very creative, sensitive designs, being conscious about the environment. We're working on a number of greenfield buildings right now. So yes, I definitely see a growing awareness in that.
And how do you feel that the pandemic is going to change our profession? Like, do you feel that's going to be like a before COVID and after COVID situation once this is over?
Um, so I mean, not necessarily. I think every profession is definitely going to see a lot more people being more open to working from home. We're going to see a lot more of, video calls and conference calls. Um, with specifically to architecture, I think, we as a firm have never been open to people working from home. I think this pandemic has really been an eye opener for us as well, because we've been able to work pretty efficiently. So just the other day, I was having a conversation, and we were saying that even after the lockdown opens, why not explore the possibility of people working from home for a little longer, right? But I think as architects, we really need to see how this is going to change the way people live, right? I mean, how can we do things where, you know, we maintain cleanliness with least maintenance? We increase hygiene factors. How can we design things within spaces where, you don't need human intervention? You don't need to be touching things. For example, I
Hmm.
mean, it can be the smallest of things. You look at today the way doors are opened, right? Everyone is going on touching the handle. Is there a possibility where we get into, I mean, these are small changes, but we need to be sensitive towards these small things within our built environment. Even currently, it's not about building something new. It's looking at, the existing built up space and seeing what are the changes we can implement over there as well, right? Because I think that is where the strength of design comes in, right? Whether we can have voice automated elevators, right, so
Hmm.
that you're not having to touch buttons. So these are small changes, but I think you really need to I mean, it needs to be, I mean, there will definitely be a lot of change in the way things are done, in the way things are designed, I would think, going forward, especially with hygiene factors and cleanliness in mind.
Yeah, and I feel there's going to be a lot of new thesis topics and thesis ideas from this situation.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Where do you see yourself, and where do you see Rathi Associates 10 years from now?
So, Manish, we've been a boutique firm. We enjoy doing things like that. We enjoy keeping it boutique. We like to spend a lot of time on projects that we do. We like discussion. We like interaction with our clientele, right? We like to have an inclusive kind of attitude towards the project. Um, I would like to see us doing more public spaces. Like I told you, we're doing a lot with sports infrastructure now, so that's a key area of interest for us. Those are few of the high priority projects that I see ourselves doing in the near future. But yeah, I think we've had a good run. I think we need to continue that. We need to stay focused and dedicated. We need to adapt with. I think we've been a little laid back with adapting to some of the newer technologies, which is something I think we need to focus on a lot more. For example, implementing BIM, things like that. But I think we've been doing well. We haven't taken part in too many competitions. We started taking part in competitions about 3 years back, and we've won 3-4 competitions. 2 we won in Europe, 2 we won in Bangalore.
Nice.
So that was very interesting. I see us doing a lot of research-oriented work, which which has been of a lot of interest for us. So I think that's how we would like to steer ahead.
Awesome. All right. My last question to you is, what advice would you give to the young architects and students coming out of architecture school?
So I think architecture needs to be a fun subject. You have to keep it serious when it has to be serious, but I think you just need to enjoy architecture, because you can't get your creative best if you're not enjoying the subject, right? Expose yourself, see things, travel, be observant. For me, architecture, you're learning at every step, right? You go to a new restaurant, you're looking at what's happening there, you're looking at the materials, you're looking at the lighting. There's so many things you can absorb, right? So be observant, expose yourself more. And most importantly, I think when you finish architecture, don't start your own practice. Work with a good firm, size of firm not being important, but the kind of work they're doing being very important. Work for an extended period of time and then decide what you want to do.
Awesome. All right, Rohan, that was a great session. We'll quickly jump into the quickfire round. We don't really have a question from the audience, but hopefully in the future we will. So starting off, which book has inspired you the most as an architect?
So I think one book which most architects read is Fountainhead when they're in college, right? Ayn Rand. I think that's one of the most inspiring books for an architect. I think Fountainhead would be the book.
But do you feel that the Fountainhead philosophy of solo architect, do you feel that still holds true?
No, so I don't think working solo holds good in any profession, right? I think it's all about teamwork, right? But I don't think Fountainhead's philosophy is about a solo architect, right? It could be a teamwork. It's more about the beliefs of an architect, which are getting bogged down because of the client and the person who is spending the money for the project, right? And it's the frustration that an architect goes through, right? So I think you don't have to be a solo architect for that, but the frustrations that you go through as an architect, because you can see what something is going to be like, but not always are you able to translate it like that, which there are multiple factors for it, client aspirations being one of them.
All right. What's presently on your playlist? Or do you listen to any kind of music?
Right now, sitting locked at home, Manish, I think we're all playing monkey dance. Yeah.
What would you have chosen had you not taken up architecture?
So like you already know, I chose computer science, right? And I came back to architecture. So I don't think I would choose anything other than architecture now. I completely enjoy it. I love the subject. I don't think there's a second choice for me.
All right. Which movie has inspired you to a certain extent, or we watch a lot of movies, right, as architects?
So I think there's this movie by called Shawshank Redemption. Tim Robinson and Morgan Freeman. I watched it many years back, but that was a wonderful movie. I like The Game by Michael Douglas. Right? I mean, there are multiple movies. I don't think I can pinpoint movies like that, but I think these two are particularly movies that I've really been fond of.
All right. And as an architect, you travel quite a lot, right? So which city would you consider your favorite?
London, hands down. I think, London, I studied there, have a ton of friends over there. I think London's a great melting point. You have people from all over the world coming to London, and it actually has become, a space where you feel so much at home,
Mm.
because I think the Brits are no more in London, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've all gone away from London because everyone
Yeah.
else from the world has come into London. In
Yeah.
fact, I was in London 2 years back, and I was outside Selfridges, and I couldn't even you couldn't say you're in England, right? It felt
Oh.
like you're in some Arab country.
Okay.
But honestly, I mean, there was some Arab music playing. There are these guys on, rickshaws and things like that. It didn't feel like you're in London. But I mean, said that, I think, you have such a mixed lot of people, and particularly for me, I have really good friends now in London. So it's always, you know, it's always a place I look forward to going back to.
Yeah, that happens actually in communally also in Bangalore, where you feel like certain places uh is
Not in Bangalore anymore. Yeah.
yeah. All right. And what does a daily routine in your life look like? Maybe you could mention the one before the COVID.
So daily routine in my life is, I love working out. So I go to the gym in the morning before office,
Hmm.
and then office. I get to office. I finish up by 7:38. I would think every day. Come back home. I have two kids, so spend time with the kids, and then in the evening maybe watch a movie or just go to bed. I think that's a typical normal day. I've
Hmm.
been learning the guitar.
Oh,
I
nice.
I want to. My elder daughter plays the piano, so I want to play with her in a band, and so I've been learning the guitar.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
guitar has become part of my everyday routine. But yeah, that's what my day is like.
Yeah, it would be great if you could play a song for us.
Oh, not right now. I just told you I just started learning, but I will. I will next time for sure.
All right. And my last question to you is what is architecture?
What is architecture? So I think I mentioned, for me, architecture is like a wayfinder, right? It's all about exploration. It's all about experimentation. It's about taking risks. It's about, you know, not knowing and getting to a point through that exploration and experimentation, right? I mean, and you get to that point. Yes, architecture has a lot to do with art and science mixed together, and you hear a lot of that kind of philosophy, right? That it's
Hmm.
art and technology coming together. Yeah, that all comes together. But I think what is the essence of architecture is to go from a point which you don't know to a point which you know, and you translate that with art, technology, everything. You blend it all in together. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a wayfinder for me. It's a wayfinder for the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Rohan. It was a great session. I wish I could keep talking more about architecture and design. You have so many good views and points, which definitely will benefit the viewers and the listeners. Thanks for coming on.
Good. Thank you so much, Manish. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
And before I let you go, what's the best way our listeners could get in touch in case they want to reach out to you?
So I'm not very active on social media,
Hmm.
but they can always email me, rohanrathi@gmail.com. That's my personal mail ID. Uh, so they can always send me an email on that. They can always, I do have social media accounts, right? So they can always uh, connect with me on that, but I'm not very active on it.
All right. So that was a wrap, guys. We had Rohan Rathi from Rathi Associates in Bangalore. A lot of great, interesting talking points. Although we had a glitch in between, we still made it through, and I'm sure we're going to have a few more episodes like this, doing a live podcast. I hope to have you on in the future as well, Rohan. Talk more about design and architecture.
Look forward, Manish.
Thank you.
Thank you.